So this morning, we're getting a new sense of the defense that Donald Trump will put forth against the new charges. His attorney said it's all purely political.
Our focus is on the fact that this is an attack on free speech and political advocacy. And there's nothing that's more protected under the First Amendment than political speech. Mr. Trump is entitled to a defense. The government has had 3 years to investigate this, and now they want to rush this to trial in the middle of a political season.
All right, with us now, former federal prosecutor Danya Perry. She is representing Michael Cohen now in a civil case against Donald Trump. And National Security Attorney Mark Zaid, he is representing the estate of U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick in a civil lawsuit against Trump. Danya, to the argument being made by Mr. Lauro there, Trump's counsel, free speech. Donald Trump had a right to say everything he said. In fact, in the indictment itself, it says the defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome-determinative fraud during the election and he had won. What's the prosecutor's way around that?
So I think that's a straw man argument. If he had been charged with inciting an insurrection, for example, there might be a legitimate First Amendment defense. The charges were crafted very carefully here and skirted that issue. So the question really is not whether or not the former president believed that the election was stolen, and we'll put a pin on that because it's, I think, very clear from the four corners of the indictment that he didn't believe that. But was anything done in furtherance of the scheme to overturn the results of the election? And here there are so many allegations about, for example, the false slate of electors. So I think the question more is, did the president at the time knowingly allow these false names with falsified documents, fake places where the fake votes were taken? Did he know that that was being done and that those fake names were going to be submitted to Congress? And from, it flies off the pages that he did know that. So I think that's a false defense, and I don't see that flying in court.
Not so much what he said, he had a right to say it, is what he did. The acts were corrupt, the prosecutors will say, or he coerced people to commit corrupt acts. Mark, another defense here, and we've begun to hear this, and I know we will hear it more, is Trump was acting on advice of counsel. There were lawyers telling him, you have a right to do this.
Well, the problem for that is a number of those lawyers are the co-conspirators yet to be formally identified, although, as you guys have reported, 5 of the 6 have been identified. And this district court, unlike in the Middle District of Florida, in the Mar-a-Lago case, has ruled on piercing the attorney-client privilege. In fact, there are numerous emails and information in this indictment. I look particularly at paragraph 30 dealing with Georgia, where it's talking specifically about communications with counsel, but showing that there's a potential unlawful act in having Donald Trump file a known false verification with respect to the civil lawsuit in Georgia. So that's going to be a difficult argument. And also, we've all reported, a number of these lawyers, Eastman, Powell, Giuliani, are all facing disciplinary action in their respective bar associations, their licensing jurisdictions, for unethical conduct related to exactly what this indictment is about.
If you can put that in ways that maybe some of us who haven't gone to law school would understand, right? Why can't I say a lawyer said it was okay, even if that lawyer maybe was a really bad lawyer?
Sure. So I've been watching Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. So anyone who's ever watched those can see how a lawyer cannot participate in unlawful activity. You could be a lawyer for a drug cartel, but you can't help the drug cartel distribute the drugs and help, beat up people to send a message. So there's a fine line. There are certain things we can do, and even criminal defense lawyers can do, that some people might not find palatable, but there is a fairly clear line that you can't cross, and the argument, and certainly the bar jurisdictions, are saying these lawyers cross that line.
Danya, you put a pin in the issue of intent before. Let's take that pin out, because all over this indictment, it does seem that Jack Smith and his team are trying to address that, listing again and again and again how people told Trump he had lost.
So I don't think that's an element, or I know as a matter of law, it's not technically an element of any of the crimes that are charged. But as a matter of storytelling and jury appeal, it certainly would behoove the prosecutors to be able to present evidence to the jury that this guy was lying the entire time, that anyone around him with any credibility, every advisor, every lawyer, every campaign aide, his Department of Justice, White House counsel, were telling him there was no fraud, this election was not stolen, you have lost. And so I do think it might matter to the jury to really understand the depth of the deceit here. And you want to avoid a jury nullification issue where, even one juror could think, hey, he shouldn't have submitted these fake names, but he really thought he'd won. So kind of a conscientious objection kind of a process. So I think that in terms of explaining this to the public and also to those 12 members of the jury, I think that's an important part of the narrative here.
Mark, how quickly do you think this trial can take place, and how do you think that Judge Tanya Chutkan will handle it?
So that's a big issue here. So unlike the Mar-a-Lago case, which I've handled Espionage Act cases before, they're very straightforward. Generally speaking, they don't go to trial because they're that straightforward. They get decided in pretrial motions, and then the individual pleads out most typically. This case is a lot more complicated. Factually, somewhat legally, but more factually because there's a lot of players. And that's one of the reasons we probably don't see the other co-conspirators being indicted. That will delay the case too. I am not confident this will go to trial before the election, unfortunately. There are a lot of motions and discovery efforts that the defense can make. This judge has been around now for almost a decade. I've had some cases before her. She's a good judge. I think she's going to be fair, and I hope and think Judge Cannon down in Florida will be fair. But there's a lot of other issues or sort of availability that Judge Cannon has to make new decisions because there's no precedent down there, whereas up here, this type of case is legally a little bit more settled. But factually, it's not going to be an easy case.
Mark Zaid, Danya Perry, thanks to both of you. Great discussion.